This week on NWP, we're just going to be so damn full from so much consumption.
Boys and girls, I think you'll find that my pants will blow your mind. Look at my pants with the eyes in your face. My legs are covered in outer space. Space pants. Space pants. I am wearing space pants. Do you see my pants? No way, you missed them. My pants are a tour of the solar system. When I say space, you say pants. Space pants.
Hello everyone and welcome to Nerds Without Pants, episode 128. We cover everything while bearing it all. I am Julian, and I'm not joined as always by Patrick, but I am joined as always by Angelo.
I like to consumpt. I like the consumption.
We got the consumption. Yeah, it's just me and Angelo this week, which means that it's going to be one of the least downloaded episodes of the year, because for some reason, when Patrick's out and it's just me and Angelo, like, nobody gives a shit. It's like, nobody comments, like the hit count is really low. They just don't like the knowledge of us. They're old, no, I'm not going to say old people, because we're not old. The older people on the podcast. That's what it is.
Patrick adds entertainment value that we just can't live up to. That's kind of what it...
That's what it is. He brings the funny.
He does.
We bring the facts. But no facts needed for this episode. We're going to be doing all Consumption Junction for this one, because it's been a while, guys, since we've done special episodes, and then we've had a big break and other special episodes. So it's been a while since we just talked about stuff that we've been doing. So we're going to do that for this entire episode. But before we do that, our next episode, is going to be our first regular format of 2018, which I'm very excited for. So I guess what we'll do, how should we do this? Let's, we'll do the stage select thing at the opener, and then we'll unveil Pack Watch at the end. I think that'll probably work the best.
Makes sense.
So it being the first episode of the year, it'll be I think it's my turn for stage select anyway. So my stage select is actually an idea that a friend of mine, gave me, my best friend Joe out in Colorado. I want to know your 3 favorite Easter eggs in video games. Ooh. I thought about saving it for Easter time, but whatever.
Sure.
I didn't want to forget this one, and I'll let you decide what you want to term Easter egg, like if it's a secret level or like hidden character or a secret code, what have you. Like I'm willing to be flexible with this, but I want to know your favorite 3, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. So go ahead and get those to us by 8:30 Central Time on February 22nd. You can either go to pixelbit.com and comment in the show thread for episode 128, or you can hit us up on Twitter at NWPcast, and we'll read those out on the air. That's all for housekeeping for now. We're gonna break open the jar of destiny for the Pack Watch segment at the end of the show. So don't let me forget, Angelo.
Right. Jar of destiny.
You know my brain. Yes. So yeah, what have you been up to? What do you? How are you, Angelo?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad to be doing this again. I have not done this in forever.
Yeah, it's my fault. I was actually ended up having to do an impromptu trip out of town. We were supposed to record last week, so we're get off to a bit of a rocky start in 2018. But we've got some big plans. For the year. So
we do.
Yeah,
fun plans.
Yes.
I didn't even talk about like the Christmas stuff, but that's okay. I just realized that. But
no, actually, you need to at least like hit that up real quick, because like the Angelo Grant, Christmas haul from your wife is like,
oh crud, it's not in front of me. Yeah, I mean, actually, we played it kind of low key this year. She gave me my Christmas present kind of early. It was like the SNES Classic, but
nice. Oh you mentioned that.
Yeah, I got some other stuff. I got like Neo and things like that, and I mentioned Nier. I've been playing Nier. I think I mentioned I got a board game called Black Fleet. I don't remember if I did or not.
I don't recall.
So maybe we did do this, and okay. Then I got a board game called Black Fleet from my mother-in-law. That's kind of it. Like, it was pretty low. I got 2 copies of Nier, actually. No, I like that game. So
I wonder why.
Yeah, I'm kind of not subtle about it, am I?
No. You said you got Neo also?
I got Neo as well, which looks like right up my alley.
Yeah.
Kind of excited to be playing that.
I'll be curious to hear about that later on. Real quick, like we don't have to get into it, but like, what are your hot takes on Nier so far?
So here's the thing. It feels like, and I haven't played it too far, I think. It feels like it's taking the same approach as the original Nier. In fact, a lot of the beats feel the same. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe I haven't gotten to like the twist yet or whatever. There might be a twist that, you know, and if you hadn't played the original Nier, maybe there's a twist in there that I'll pick up on and be like, okay, that's cool.
Right.
That isn't there for you. And it might not matter in the long run. But like even to the point where some of the quests, I'm like, wait, this reminds me of the lighthouse quest from the original Nier. Like just and I don't want to get into exactly why or how, but anybody who's played both games will probably be able to figure out what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried that it's going to come off feeling like the sophomore effort from a band where it's like, oh, okay, you didn't want to get too experimental. You wanted to make sure you did more of the same, so you almost played it too safe. Like that kind of thing, which would be weird because that's not what he does. And it also doesn't feel as screwed up as I expected. Like, I don't know, maybe it goes places. I don't. Right. But like
last time we recorded, like you had mentioned that like you were in the desert. So have you gotten to this cannot continue?
I have not. And I've been told that, you know, that's the thing. Like you get to this cannot continue and you go, oh, but I'm looking forward to that. The other part of that is my oldest has been big. He's a Monster Hunter fan. And like when my kids are into like capital letter video games, you know what I mean? Like I kind of want to encourage that.
Yeah.
So he wanted to play, he loves Monster Hunter. He has it on his DS. He's played the crap out of it. Monster Hunter World came out, but that's a PS4 exclusive. So
no,
it's been using Monster Hunter World.
Oh, you mean in your house? Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's not on Switch.
Right.
And it's not on Xbox One.
It is.
Monster Hunter World is?
Yeah.
Well, actually, but yeah, that's possible that I missed that because I don't have an Xbox One.
Yeah, it's on. Basically, it's on everything except Switch. It's on PC and it's on the big consoles.
Gotcha. Yeah, his PC wouldn't be able to run it anyway. Yeah. And I got to tell you, like he's been playing this thing, and one time I looked over and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." You're like on some kind of volcanic landscape fighting a monster, and then I went over and I was doing my thing. Then I looked back over and it was panning out, and he's actually fighting a giant monster on the back of another lava monster. And I'm like, okay, this changes things. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it does really weird transitional stuff where he'll do something and then it'll just fade and he'll be somewhere else. And apparently this is a Monster Hunter thing. It's jarring to me. I don't like it, but he's cool with it, so what do I care? But I don't know. He's having a blast with it, and it looks epic. Like, every time I look over there, awesome is happening. And the environments are pretty cool, too. Like, they seem pretty creative. So I don't know. Like, I haven't been, like, watching him play this game because at some point I might want to give it a shot, but it's cool.
I've been Monster Hunter curious since the beginning because I was actually at the E3 where they showed it for the first time for PS2. And I knew one of the guys who was at the Capcom booth. He used to work for Acclaim Austin. He worked on South Park 64 actually. And so we were talking a little bit and the game looked so cool. And then I never got around to playing it on the PS2. And then everything that I heard about it on the PSP sounded like, you know, you had to do this weird method of holding the PSP to be effective. They call it the claw hand. And and then I picked it up for the 3DS. I was like, okay, this is cool, but I don't, I want to play this on the couch on a night, with good graphics.
Right.
And so here it is. And it's like, and I really want it, but I've actually, and we'll get into it later, but I've been actually working through some backloggy stuff. I have not bought a game in 2018, so far. And that's, you know, I was close to getting Monster Hunter, and then of course Dragon Ball FighterZ, which I played enough of the beta to know that I don't need to play that. I don't need to buy that game. I wish that I had that passion for fighting games that I used to, because it's so pretty. I hope everybody rips off whatever Arc System Works is doing with their graphic engine, because I want RPGs to look like that.
That game looks amazing.
It does. It
doesn't look like a fighting game.
No.
I mean, it does, but it really doesn't.
It looks better than the cartoon.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. You know what? I believe it though.
Because, you know, there's little cinematics where they are straight up doing homages to specific scenes. And I've seen side-by-side comparisons of here's the animation and here's the game. And it's like, the game looks 10 times better.
That's great. Like, it looks like clips from, if you took the UI away and somebody showed me 10 seconds of that, I would think it's an anime.
Yeah.
Like, it just looks like an anime to the point where, like, stuff is getting, like, you deflect a fireball and it goes into the background and wrecks something.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's freaking great.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, like, you know, and I know, like, there's been some scuttlebutt lately about, like, what Final Fantasy 16, you know, will be, because, like, since 15 did well and everything, and I'm like, I know that they always want to do hyper real, but man, if they did a Final Fantasy that looked like that, like I've said on the show before, like, I want them to have their Wind Waker moment. Just steal it. Just steal that tech. Headhunt the people who are responsible for it. And then have them do that for you.
Also, and I hate to come out here and say this, but Capcom, guys, this looks so much better than anything Capcom has done ever. I mean, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's a different art style. But at the same time, like, why can't I have a new Street Fighter Alpha that looks like this, guys?
Right?
Like, you know, I would be all over that with a spoon.
Well, this is what Street Fighter used to sort of, it didn't look like that, but it was hearkening to that sort of like an anime look, right?
Yeah. Like the 3 Alpha games and Street Fighter Third Strike were definitely like trying to be more cartoony. And to be fair, Street Fighter 4 is very anime-ish.
Right.
But to me, it looks more like manga. It's much more of a manga style to me.
Yeah,
but they've definitely got exaggerated features and stuff like that.
Right.
But then Street Fighter 5 just looks soulless.
Right. And I mean, they even went, like, they had, like, the brush thing for Street Fighter 5, was it? Where that was their whole thing?
That was 4. I mean, 5's got it a little bit, but 4 was the one where they were like, yeah, like, especially when they first unveiled it, you almost thought that was going to be the art style where it was going to almost look like Okami, like, all the time. And it doesn't quite look like that, but they still have the ink effects on it.
It actually, I'm sorry, like, I'm watching that and I'm like, man, this is really it makes Street Fighter look bad. It doesn't make it look like, oh, this looks better than Street Fighter. It's not marginal. It's not a marginal difference.
Yeah.
It's a dramatic difference. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of reminds me of the first time I saw DOA 3. And, like, the last thing I saw was a Tekken game, and then it went to DOA 3, and I'm like, this is night and day. Like, the two don't compare. This looks so much better. And then, you know, like, the other thing is they caught up, right?
Yeah,
now, you know, you look back at the DOA, and DOA is on par with everything else. It's not leading the charge. And in some cases, it's not as good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's always, like, gameplay-wise, DOA has always been kind of in, like, on the back burner. Like, it's got its interesting mechanics, especially, like, the reversal stuff, but
that is cool.
It was definitely more about the flash of the graphics and the environments and stuff like that. And boobs.
And the animation was always freaking fluid, too. Like, before other fighting games were doing that, like, just the way stuff would just sort of roll out. I remember just watching like, you could set up fights in those games where the CPU would just fight itself, and it just looked like a real fight to me at the time, you know, compared to what I had seen before then, where everything was much stiffer and more, you know, execution versus execution, whereas, I went halfway through this combo, and then this person grabbed their arm and threw them over their shoulder off the side of the ring, and then drill kicked them in the face. You know, everything flowed. Anyway.
That was a long aside for me to just say that, like, yeah, I played a little bit of the Dragon Ball FighterZ beta, and people were already, within, like, 2 days of that beta going up, playing it like it was a 3-year-old fighting game, and I was like, this is insurmountable for me. And maybe part of it is that I don't play those types of fighting games. I don't play like the Marvel vs. Capcom stuff. So maybe there's a latent bit of skill set that crosses over, but I have a good overall aptitude for fighting games in general. And this was like I felt like I was just like standing still. You know, like I may as well have not been holding the controller. That type of inadequacy between me and the people that I was playing. And I was like, this game's not even out yet. And this is already like the difference. Like, there's no way that I'm coming back from this. So I was like, I'll pick it up on a sale and just play the single player content. But I've heard the single player content isn't great, but I'm a big enough Dragon Ball fan to just at least want to see it. And then that's probably all I'll do with it. But I've realized recently it's like I buy fighting games and then I don't spend the time to get decent at them, but at least with like Street Fighter 5 or like a Tekken game or something, I'm good enough to where I don't get blown out in every single match that I play, where this was like, oh no, like I literally didn't hit this guy.
Yeah. I saw that. I saw posts, because Twitter, there's some people that I follow that are in fighting games, and somebody like posted this whole breakdown of this one character, and I'm like, I can't even understand, like, and none of the language here. They've come up with this shorthand the fighting game community has that you literally need a lexicon to understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, it is not translatable into regular English. And I sort of understand the need for that, because if you can develop one word that takes the place of a sentence so that you can communicate, you do it.
Yeah.
But it makes it just that much more impenetrable.
And the funny thing is that, especially with like Dragon Ball FighterZ, I've seen a lot of videos going up like, hey, you might be new to fighting games because you like Dragon Ball, and that's really cool. So here's like some beginner stuff. And it's like, even their beginner stuff, they don't understand that they think that they're scaling it back, but it's still word salad. Like, even me, who's proficient at fighting games, I'm like, I understood 65% of that.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that you're saying that I don't even know what that was.
And
so.
I just got involved in, over the past couple of years, I got involved in a whole new type of gaming community, and they have their own language for things. And then I come over here and I try to explain, like, okay, so I played this board game recently, and I catch myself going to, like, it's a worker placement area control situation that's inspired by Euros. I could do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would make sense to people that are following, like, that community, but to, like, people who are listening to this show who are just, like, gamers in general, mostly video gamers, they're going to be like, none of what you just said makes any sense. So
Right.
I don't do that. And if I catch myself, I try to stop myself.
And to be fair, you've been pretty good about explaining those terms.
And I usually use it, and I usually approach stuff on a basic level, like, here's an idea of what I like about the game, without getting into the nitty-gritty about, like, how many cards do you draw, and what do you do with these, and, like, I could, but why?
Yeah.
Like, just what's the gist of the game, right? But I can also understand, like, how that's a trap. Like, how you do it for so long, I think you're like, oh, wait, I need to break this down, and I need to break it down further because people don't understand. Like, here's the shorthand we have for a very basic mechanic, like worker placement, what that means, right?
Yeah.
If I were to walk up to somebody who has just played Monopoly and say, oh, this is a worker placement game, they'll like be like, what? What does that even mean? Like, well, it means you have a handful of things that you place on the board to mark spots, and then those spots let you take actions. What do you mean take an action? Like, that's not a term I'm familiar with. You have to, I could probably say take an action now, and people know what that means.
Yeah.
On this show, but again, if I'm explaining this to, like, say, my parents who've just played Risk and Monopoly and maybe Candyland when we were kids, it's not going to help.
Right. Yeah, I mean, at least with gamers, like, there's video game corollaries to that. Like, taking actions, like, yeah, I've played Final Fantasy Tactics or XCOM, like, that immediately says something to me.
Yeah.
It might not necessarily be exactly what you're referring to in the board game sense, but it's probably closer than someone who has no concept of this.
Right. And really, all worker placement games are to tally and I don't know why we're going into here, but they're like your work. They're like your points, right? The only difference is it's like, well, instead of having a pool of action points, you have these little tokens. But the gaming part of that is if one of the other players has taken a spot on the board that lets you take that particular type of action, you now cannot take it. You have to take your points and spend them elsewhere.
Mm.
That's how a typical worker placement works. But here we are. Hi. Talking about board games while you're talking about a fighting game. How do we end up here?
Hey, it's an all Consumption Junction episode.
Sure
this is what happens.
Yeah. So, but man, that game is gorgeous. I want to buy it. I don't even like Dragon Ball. I mean, I probably would like Dragon Ball. I've made that joke before about the one episode I saw was like the worst one. But like, I don't know, man. Like that is a good looking game, and all the clips make me want, like, I want to partake of this madness. Like,
and
it's just.
What's been really cool about it is it's been like crossing over both ways.
Yeah.
So I have heard non-fighting game fans picking the game up because they love Dragon Ball. And I have heard fighting game fans picking up Dragon Ball because they like the fighting game. And like, I mean, you and I both listen to like the Giant Bomb podcasts, and like to hear flippin' Dan Reichert and Jeff Gerstmann both watching Dragon Ball Z Kai right now at the same time is something that I never in a million years would have ever thought would happen.
Yeah.
And they both seem to dig it, which is even crazier. And I'm like, what is going on?
And then there's people like me who I like hear people describe how the game is played, and obviously I'm not going to go online and hold a candle to what's going on there, but it almost sounds like the type of fighting game that I could pick up and play with, like my brother, who I used to play Street Fighter with, or my kids, who have probably never played a fighting game before.
You'll have a good time that way.
Oh, I know.
Definitely.
Because, I mean, actually my youngest is into anime now, like in the general sense. Like Attack on Titan is cool to him and that sort of thing. He's just coming into that. At one point, he's like, I kind of want to like make my own anime. I'm like, I don't think you understand everything that goes into that, but you're having fun, so knock yourself out.
Right.
Like just sketching stuff. Like we all did when we were kids. We all sketched out like video game ideas and things on notebook paper when we were kids for fun. I probably still have some of those kicking around somewhere. Yeah, man. When you're a kid and you have the creativity just flowing, it's fun.
I think I still have it. I definitely gamify a lot of things, which actually I guess is a good place because we were going to talk a little bit about TV, and it just reminded me because I want a video game of this series like yesterday. But Altered Carbon just came out for Netflix about a week ago, which apparently is like based on a book or a series of books, and now I need to read it because I am like so invested in this world, and I say this as someone who hated Blade Runner, and it's very Blade Runner-esque, but
Blade Runner is slow though. It's that noir. It's a sci-fi futuristic film noir, and if you're not into film noir, doesn't matter how much you like sci-fi, you're not going to be in a Blade Runner.
Oh, but I love film noir. That's the thing. I just found like I have a lot of problems with Blade Runner, and that's neither here nor there. It's also, maybe we'll talk about it with Nier, because I think a lot of the reasons why I hated Nier are the reasons that I hate Blade Runner. So Altered Carbon is definitely, cyberpunk, futuristic noir. I mean, it's literally a murder mystery, that takes place in San Francisco, like 500 years in the future, right? And it's like dirty and neon and gritty and everything. But the whole idea is that when you turn 1, you're implanted with basically like a chip in the base of your brain that is you. So like it records all of your memories, all of your personality, everything into this, and it's always updating. As long as that is not destroyed, you can be put into another body. So, let's say that you were in a car accident and your body died, but they call it a stack. Your stack was intact. Well, if you have the money, you can get another, like, let's say you had insurance, right? And so you would have your car insurance and body insurance. So you would get like a body that's comparable to what your body was. Maybe it would be slightly in worse shape, like maybe it would be a little more, banged up or something. Or maybe like you have really good insurance and then you get like this muscular Adonis body, because you got like a really good payout or something, right? And so it's a very interesting idea. And basically the core concept is that the 1% are so freaking rich that they're basically immortal, because for normal people, you can basically be put into bodies maybe 5 or 6 times before you go mad from it. But if you put your stack into a perfect clone of yourself, that's fine. Like you don't reject it, and you can just keep doing that until the end of time. So if you're rich enough to afford clones of yourself and also back up your stack to the cloud, then you literally can't die. Because even if your stack gets destroyed, it just downloads from the cloud into another body, and Bob's your uncle. You just keep going on with your life.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, but like, on top of that, like the main character is this guy called an envoy, and they're basically like super trained, and basically he's got detective vision. Like he can see through walls and stuff, and basically like he's so perceptive that he just notices all these details in like an instant. And so it makes him this badass fighter, and he just like, I want a video game of this, like so bad. Like it's a perfect, like,
it sounds cool.
It's really cool. And like the designs for the weapons and like the armor and stuff in it, like everything about it is just screams like, I wish BioWare from 10 years ago could have a crack at this, because this would be really awesome, but I don't want BioWare of 2018 to touch it.
Right. Activision BioWare.
Or EA BioWare.
EA.
Yeah.
EA. Right. Sorry, wrong evil corporation.
Yeah. but you know, but I want someone to take this and do something with it. I don't think they've actually made any video games based on like Netflix properties yet, but but this would be the prime candidate for it. I highly recommend it. I know you don't have Netflix anymore, but dude,
we'll get it back at some point.
Yeah,
we always do. I missed out on Castlevania. I'm still upset about that. Anyway, we lost it before I had a chance to watch Castlevania. But
yeah, I still haven't checked that out either.
Oh man, I want to go like this whole tangent of like, I don't know how much of you is tied to the meat. Like, even if they make a perfect backup of what's going on in your brain, do you actually travel with that? Because, you know, you're very aware of your consciousness. You're very self-aware, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then how does that work if you get plugged into something else? Like, that just sounds, I mean, I'm sure they have that all explained and worked out in the show. In reality, though, that doesn't seem like a thing that would actually work.
It brings up a lot of interesting questions. And, you know, even for myself, I'm like, yeah, I was thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind like maybe doing that like 2 or 3 times in a lifetime. Like, I wouldn't want to live forever, but like maybe, you know, if this I mean, you know, like this body is older and I've also got like some medical problems. Like, it'd be cool if like once I got to a certain point, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pay for another body that doesn't have these problems.
Right.
You know, and then live, you know, like that for 50 years and then maybe one more time and then be like, okay, peace out. You know, I'm done. But then also like there's just interesting things like, I'll just talk about this one episode real quick. In the future, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Dia de los Muertos have like merged into one super holiday. And so it's like it's a long weekend and it's a feast, but it's also like people dress up and they do the sugar skulls and stuff. But one of the things that people do on this holiday is they'll spin up dead relatives into a new body. So one of the main characters, brings her grandmother back. The main character, this character is a cop. She has a guy that was brought in for charges. And so he's basically in the tank. So she takes his body, puts her grandmother into him for the night. And so basically her grandmother comes to dinner, but she's in the body of this like 6'8", tatted up biker dude. But then he's talking like, you know, this sweet Mexican grandmother. And like he's talking in Spanish and like he has all the mannerisms and everything and he's having a really good time and he like goes to the bathroom. He's like, everybody, I'm peeing standing up, you know, like.
This sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. And again, like I was just watching it, even from the first episode, I was like, I could make this into a video game so fast. Yep. Like I could do the design doc right frickin' now.
Oh, you, there's people seeing this going, I need the license.
Yes, I hope so.
EA. It probably is.
EA makes good games. They just put crappy stuff in them sometimes.
Yeah. Get the best deal on sleeves, $9.99. They'll literally sell you the bodies in the game for real money.
I could imagine. Yeah.
If they can fit them in a loot box. Anyway.
Zing.
Yeah, I had to do it. Where are we at?
I don't know. We're all
speaking of TV. Did we ever talk about Stranger Things on this show? I don't know if we did.
We talked about it briefly. I know we brought up like Mad Max. I don't know if we talked about it since you finished it.
We didn't, and I got to tell you, the first Stranger Things, when they had the initial like monster reveal, I was disappointed, and I think I mentioned this.
Yeah,
like because it was very CG, and it wasn't bad CG per se, but it was very CG, and it wasn't. It's always worse when you see the monster, right? My opinion.
Well, especially if the monster doesn't look good, and especially when you see, like, I don't know if you've seen, like, the Demogorgon cosplay that looks better than the CG in the damn show, and it's like, yeah, guys, just go practical. Come on, like, if cosplayers can do this in their free time on, like, a regular budget, you can, come on, guys.
You can do this. You can do this. So, that is not the case with this one, right? Like, he... Real early on, I think it's late enough for us to just straight up talk about this. If not, skip ahead a little bit.
Yeah, I'll say, like, spoilers for the next few minutes, and you can definitely look in the show notes.
Sure. We'll timestamp it.
I'll try to like, I usually don't timestamp all Consumption episodes, but I'll try to put a little note in there. It came out last October, so I think we're probably okay, but.
So this one, when he gets pulled into the Upside Down, and there's the creature reveal for this, and is this monstrous Lovecraftian horror, I am like, you showed this in the first episode or two, and I am on board. Like, this is a awesome creature. I want more of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't quite pay off the way I expected, but I don't care. Like, just that reveal was great. Like, okay, that's how you do a monster reveal. Like, it's huge and it's ominous, and there's this, like, freaking, it is control, like, the environment around it is reacting to its presence with this storm. Like, this thing is like a demigod of some kind, and I have no idea what it is, and you still don't really have any idea what it is, even at the end, and I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Like,
having this unknowable thing that is still unknowable and may always be unknowable, like, it may be something that they can't actually physically fight, it may just be this force of evil that they can only hold back.
Right. And that's like the Lovecraftian bent to it, right? It's all Lovecraft's stuff is unknowable. Like, we can't quite comprehend it. We have no idea what they're really doing, what they're really up to. Everybody talks about Call of Cthulhu as being his greatest thing. And the whole conceit of that is, before they even encounter Cthulhu, they go through this world where he lives that, like, has more dimensions than we are capable of understanding. So, like, you'll be walking down the hall, and then you'll fall onto the wall of the hallway, and now that's the floor somehow. And it doesn't make any sense to you. Like, you can't quite figure out how all this stuff works. Like, you're not perceiving it correctly. And that's just the lead up to the reveal of Cthulhu, right?
Yeah.
And that's just like what this is. Like, they are straight up ripping Lovecraft. And I love it anyway. Please do. Continue with this. Like, this is what it should have been from the beginning. Because the more mystery you leave about this stuff, the more interesting it is, the more crazy it is.
Yeah.
So all we know about this thing by the end is that it's godlike and it can possess people, sort of. That's it. That's all we got. That's cool. Please do more. I'm, like, excited for the third, because they're going to do a third season now. They have to.
They had I think it was either announced right before part 2 came out or right after, but yeah, they got greenlit, I think for 2 more. Like, I think they're being a little conservative. Like, they're not trying to be like, oh, we're on board for like 6 more seasons, but I think they're trying to be like, well, we'll play it out. Like, we'll do another 1 or 2 and then see how we're feeling at the end of that.
Yeah. And I'm going to stop. I think we're going to stop with the spoilers for now, but I do want to talk about, like, what I want in the next season. Because I am sick of, well, maybe this isn't spoil. I'm not done with spoilers. I take that back. I am sick of being easily able to predict who's going to survive.
Right.
In the opening, like, I'm sorry, I don't want Game of Thrones happening here, but I want to feel like nobody is safe. And man, they almost went there, right? Mm-hmm. There was a character that I thought they were going to kill, and I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. If he goes, then that means freaking anything can happen. And they didn't do it. It was like that Metal Gear Solid moment that you always talk about, where he should have pulled the trigger and he didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? They did not pull the trigger. And then
instead they pulled the trigger. Instead they pulled the trigger on the character that I would have actually liked to have seen come back for another season.
Like, I was hoping, like, you can do sort of a window where you move and it's like, okay, we'll introduce a few new characters and we'll phase out a few of the old ones, and you can keep a continuity, right?
Yeah.
Also, I love the new kid. She is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, they're firing on all cylinders, but I want to see two things happen next. I want to see early in the season, I want to see an adult bite it, right? And later in the season, I want to see a kid bite it. And I don't want to wish harm on children. Do not misunderstand. But it'd be like, if you killed off one of those kids, I'd be like, oh no. Oh no. You know what I mean? Like,
and that would also, I mean, now that I've seen it and everything like that, like, cause they're definitely mining a lot of Stephen King stuff. So like, that would be right in line with that for sure.
Yeah.
I also really liked that, I think the character's name was Steve. Like, the asshole boyfriend from the first season becoming kind of a really cool and likable character in the second season was a twist that I wasn't prepared for.
I'm worried about what they are setting that character up to be. I think there is a place for the character that they are creating. I have suspicions about it. I worry about them handling it correctly. And it's something that so here's the thing, right? When there's a very key scene where he is watching very specifically a Striper, there's like Striper music or a Striper music video or something going on, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of key to this. And, his parents come home and his parents are a bigger jerk than he is, right? And I almost wonder if they're going to go to the, moral panic / super conservative / kind of abusive religious overtones that we all sort of experienced in the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. I think you and I did. Yeah. I think a lot of the people who listen, like I've heard it time and time again about how, and it did end up chasing a lot of people away from organized religion as a whole, right?
Yeah.
If they're going to go that route, I would like to see them approach it with a little more nuance and tact, because we've all seen the whole, I'm sick of, I got it, right? Like, we all lived through this. Like, we know that sucked. But there's a subtlety that it can be approached with now, I think, because we're far enough removed from it that I haven't seen yet. And I don't know if I'm coming through quite clearly. Like, and I've even mentioned it, like, with my own parents, right? Like, they did some stuff to me that I was like, why did you do that exactly? And it was because they were scared, right?
Yeah.
Like, they were the victims of the moral panic, and we were sort of the by proxy victims. And I almost wonder if they get to the point where they do this with the parents, I hope it's not just like, hey, let's show how mean and nasty and cruel these, like, religiously influenced people are, because Striper is a Christian band, in case people are wondering. At least that's how they promote themselves. So I'm wondering if that's why that was going on there, if they're trying to draw that connection, right? Like, you can go that route. You can go full on hardcore, like, these people are jerks and they're pushing on, or you can get to the point where they're doing it out of a terror state because of what they've been taught, like they've been manipulated. Yeah. I'd like to see that more than I'd like to see the whole, because we've seen the other one before a million times.
Yeah.
I want to see something different. And that's what I get at with this whole Stranger Things thing. And I think they're getting there. I think they're getting braver. I hope they are anyway.
Yeah.
And I hope it continues. So.
Me too. And I hope that they get to do the show a little longer, because, like, it's interesting with child actors, like, because you never know what you're going to get, right? Because, mm-hmm. like, you could have a kid who's, like, super charismatic and stuff when they're 8, and then by the time they're 12, you're like, oh, they're terrible. Like, they're, mm-hmm. like, and I mean, like, they're not good actors, right? Like, I think the girl who plays Sansa Stark is a perfect example. She is a terrible actress. Mm. Like, they probably thought she was fine when she was, like, I don't know, 15 or whatever. But as an adult, like, I was watching her in the last X-Men and I was like, oh no, she's just really bad. Like, she's just got, like, no charisma whatsoever. But then you also have, like, the other spectrum where it's like, oh, this person is rapidly becoming too good for this material. And, like, I saw, like, Millie Bobby Brown's audition tape for Stranger Things, and it's like, oh, right, she's a real actress. Like, she's been doing this since she was really itty bitty, mm-hmm. and she's classically trained, and you're not going to be able to afford her in a couple years.
Yeah.
Or it's not going to be that. It's going to be like, she's going to grow past it. She's going to be like, hey, look, I'm about to be nominated for an Oscar for this movie that I did last year, so peace out, guys. Like, I'm done with sci-fi.
I don't know, they've got, what's her name, the mother there, I can't think of her name right now.
Winona Ryder?
Yeah, she's a big name.
Yeah, but she's a big name that's on, like, the downwards crest of her. It's mean to say, but, like, there's an up and down to Hollywood, right?
To be fair, I have often wondered how much of the crazy she's portraying is actually Winona Ryder. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's getting to that point.
Oh man, she looked so good at that when they won their Golden Globe or whatever, though. Oh,
How long ago was that?
it was like a year and change ago.
Yeah.
Like for Stranger Things, like when she, that very famous gif of her, like looking very confused at what, David Harbour's saying. But like, I was like, damn, Winona, you're looking really good.
She aged well. She did.
Yes.
She's always been pretty on the good looking side.
She has, but I think they made her so motherly and disheveled in Stranger Things that I was almost like, oh, that's just Winona Ryder because she got older. And then I was like, oh no, she's still like really glamorous and everything. It's just, the beauty of Hollywood makeup.
Right. They wanted to stress her out a little bit, and they did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good on. Also, hey, while we're at it, good makeup in that show.
Yeah.
For real. That's
Very
Stranger Things.
That.
I could really talk about Stranger Things for a while. That was a good, fun ride.
Yeah.
Second season was as good as the first. Except the very end. I felt like they didn't know how to end it, right? Like, dudes got a machine gun and bullets work now, and they didn't last season. I don't know. It was weird. It
was definitely the aliens to alien thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that was by design.
Sure.
But yeah, you're right. Like it's also the ninja problem. I don't know if you've ever heard about the ninja problem.
Not
where
in those words. I'm probably familiar with the issue, but go on.
A single ninja is like a lethal force to be reckoned with, but a group of ninjas is much easier to deal with. Like, if you ever looked at like movies, it's like, one ninja will get in and just wreck your shit up. But if you're fighting like 100 of them, they just go down, with like any little thing.
Gotcha.
Look at like Ninja Turtles 1, right? Like when they fight the Foot Clan, it's just like, oh, they're just cannon fodder, right? But if they fight like, if it was just like one super foot soldier or whatever, like they'd have a hard time with him, like, I'm trying to think of better examples than that, but.
I watched that movie within the last 3 or 4 years. And I don't want to say it's aged bad, because it didn't. I enjoyed myself, but it's weird. Know?
It's weird in the sense that, like, if you take it, if you take it historically in the sense of, like, this was the biggest thing for kids of that time, and then it's such a dark and gritty movie, which, I mean, hey, the original source material was dark and gritty, but even for me as a kid, that was like, what, 1989?
Yeah.
Like, having watched the cartoon, and I don't think the Archie comics were out yet, but having watched the cartoon and then watching this movie and being like, wow, this is the Ninja Turtles, but it's not the Ninja Turtles.
Right.
And that being, like I was entertained for sure, but at the same time I was like, wow, this is really violent, and like they're angry with each other, and like it's real dark.
It was on the heels of the Tim Burton Batman movies though, and I think that had a lot to do with it. Like, they were like, wow, these movies did real well. We should do that with the Ninja Turtles a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And I think also for that particular movie, like, Eastman and Laird had more creative control, because they have gone on record as saying they did not like that cartoon. Like, they were not fans of what was done to their property. I mean, it made them a ton of money, but as far as like being artists, creating something, they were like, this is the exact opposite of what we made, because they based it on Frank Miller's Daredevil run, which is like one of the darkest runs of Daredevil ever.
Well, Frank Miller, anytime I don't even know the run you're talking about, but I know Frank Miller enough to know that, he doesn't do light, happy bubbles and cheery and rainbows.
Yeah.
It's not him.
Yeah. So for them to go from as that for the inspiration, and they, I've only read one issue of the original Ninja Turtles comic. It was issue 50. But in that issue, Shredder comes back and murders the entire Foot Clan single-handedly.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, this is way different than the Archie comic.
I kind of want to read that now. I want to know what like a Dark Ninja Turtles is. I mean, because that sounds even crazier than the movies.
Yeah, man, so. You should definitely Google, at least do some image search of like the original Eastman and Laird run, because even just the art style is like very dark and gritty.
Because they're all wearing wear matching red headbands, but they all look like they want to like kill somebody with their teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do we got next here?
We should probably talk about a video game.
We should.
Like, I guess we talked a little bit about some games, but like I said, I've been going through my backlog a bit. So, because we didn't really talk about like Christmas time sales and stuff, but every Black Friday I'll usually try to stock up on some stuff. I don't know why, because I've got plenty to play. But this year I did all of my purchases through Xbox Live. I just got digital. And I'm proud of myself because I've actually played or completed most of the games that I bought. So just real quick, I bought the Disney Saturday Morning Cartoon Collection just to have it. And I kind of messed around with that for a little bit. I bought Agents of Mayhem, which I played enough to know that I really like it, but it is so buggy as to be nearly unplayable. So I put it down. Like, I had so many not game breaking, but game pausing bugs where like checkpoints wouldn't load or quests wouldn't be completable until I like exited out of them and redid them. Or I had one situation where a dude's gun my character's gun was invisible, but it actually was also it didn't exist in the game world, so he couldn't shoot. Like stuff like that, just like fundamental QA testing stuff that didn't get fixed.
Major flaws.
Major flaws.
What those are called.
Yeah, so that was a bummer because I was enjoying the game. I picked up Skyrim to finally give that more of a shot.
What platform?
This is all for Xbox One.
Okay.
I bought both Wolfenstein games, which I talked about. I finished both of those. And I picked up Gears of War 4 because that was one of the Xbox One X enhanced games. But I hadn't finished Gears of War 3. So I was like, okay, you know what? Like, I put 80 hours into Horizon. I need something quick and light. Well, not so much light, but quick, right? I was like, I'm just going to pop in Gears of War 3. It's backwards compatible. I'm going to put it on easy and just blow through it real quick because I want to know the story, you know, like I want to see how the trilogy ends. And I want to say, I have maybe an unpopular opinion here.
Okay.
I don't think the Gears of War games are actually great shooters.
No, I would agree that I would say that they're good shooters and they present themselves very well. I would say presentation is the high point of those games. But I would say as far as third-person shooters go, they're average, on the good end of average, but they're not great. They're not excellent.
Yeah. And I think, cause I was playing this on Easy Mind and like the enemies are still bullet sponges to like an obnoxious degree. Mm-hmm. And granted, I mean, they're all like giant slabs of meat that are like stacked on top of each other because like every character is just like this massive man mountain. But even so, it's like, if I shoot you in the head, I expect you to go down. Right. And there's only 2 weapons in the Gears of War catalog that will kill somebody in one shot with a headshot. And that's the torque bow and the sniper rifle.
Shot. Is it called long shot? Yeah.
Long shot, yeah. Everything else, like, it's like, you just gotta unload into their face before they finally go down. And it's like that, at some point, that's just not very fun.
Right.
You know, like this, and again, I've talked about this a lot where I'm looking more at like damage ratios, and that seems to be where people are trying to make this like artificial challenge where it's like, we're just going to make them really hard to go down, but they're not actually challenging. It's just like, so I played Gears of War 3 on easy just to blow through it. I'm playing Gears of War 4 on normal, and the biggest difference that I notice is that they take more bullets to go down and I take way fewer. So it's like, I get up to like stop and pop and I'm down. And I'm like, well, that wasn't even really fair. Like, I just like hopped out of cover. I'm dead. And it's like, okay, like,
and see, like Doom spoiled me as far as difficulty. Doom and Thief both actually, but Doom was the first one that I don't know if it was the first game I played that had difficulty options. I was mostly an NES kid up until that point.
Right.
But it was definitely the first one where I messed around with them. So, I mean, like, yeah, okay, so I had played, wow, brain, Mega Man 2. That was the only other game I could think of that had difficulty options, and it was just like, oh, okay, some of the enemies have slightly different behaviors, and they take more, and you take more damage, right? It was the old thing, right? And then Doom didn't seem like it did that so much. Like you did, you were a little easier to take down. The enemies were a little, I don't even know if the enemies were harder to take down.
No,
they were definitely, there were more enemies and they were strategically placed.
Yeah.
And that was what happened, that I was like, okay, after this, every difficulty option should do this. And none of them did.
Because it makes you play the game completely differently, because
it does.
It forces you to never stop moving and always be looking for like that next health pack or that next bit of ammo.
Right.
And that's why I like Doom 2016 so much, is like, it at some point it almost becomes like you meld with the controller and you're not even really actively thinking about it. Not to say that it's a mindless game. It's just that like, it's almost instinctual at a
Right.
certain point. And that's what I like and Halo's really good about that, where it's like, you bump up the difficulty on Halo and those enemies become smarter. And you can't, cause I tend to be like a very slow first person shooter player. That's why I'm kind of bad at them, is like, I'll like sit and I'll like wait for a shot and I'll take it and I'll usually hit. Like that's one good thing about me, is that if I'm doing a sniper rifle or something, I usually hit. But while I'm waiting to line up that shot, I'm getting turned into Swiss cheese. Right. And I can do that on easy and normal on Halo, but on harder difficulties, it's like, oh no, they already flanked me and they're behind me and they're just like ramming me with bullets while I'm trying to line up this one shot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I will say this about Gears of War 2, is it's that I always feel like taking down an enemy does feel good in that game. Not necessarily the act of taking them down, but the actual kill shot.
Oh
like,
yeah.
I never
when they
feel
turn
like
into giblets.
I don't feel like I kill an enemy. I feel like I crush them. Every single one. Like, if you shoot them in the head, their head disappears. If you manage to chainsaw them, oh boy. Oh boy. That's an intense thing.
Yeah.
Like, the game itself has a lot of the right pieces, and that's where you're talking about, like, what makes a Cliff Bleszinski game a Cliff Bleszinski game, is that, you know, I guarantee you somebody came up with him at one point, and like when you did the chainsaw animation, it went through them like butter, and he was like, nope. It needs to hesitate at it needs to hitch up, you know? And you feel it, like he goes through and he has to push a couple of times to get it all the way through, and it's like, oh man, you know, you are dissecting something. And that's cool. You know, like that's part of that game's identity. The roadie run, right? I mentioned this a million times on this show. I mentioned it at least twice, but when you break into a run and that camera swings down low and it suddenly becomes a handheld camera that somebody is running behind you with. Like, that's just cool. Like, that's a good way to do that run animation.
It is, until like there's a couple places in Gears of War 3 where you have to do extended running sequences to get away from things, and that's not great because the actual control of swinging your character around is not great for the roadie run, but it's great for quick bursts of like going from cover to cover. It looks cool and it makes you feel like you're under fire constantly, even if you aren't necessarily. It just makes you feel like, oh, he's ducking because like he's keeping his head down for protection purposes, you know, like. So that stuff, and I like the world. Like, I find the world very interesting, and that's another problem that I have with the series as a whole, is that they have all these collectibles that kind of flesh things out, but the game is always at such a breakneck pace that you don't really feel like you can stop to go search for that stuff. Right. You can, but the game has this sense of urgency to it where it's like, I know, yeah, like, it's always go, 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 you know, and so I miss out on all that stuff, cause.
Yeah. So let's talk about, let's take this for a second. Let's talk about like the central, one of the big pivot pieces, like the big, like it goes here and then goes here, is Dom's encounter with his wife, right?
Yeah.
Like that is a big moment in that game, but you don't get to experience it because it's not paced well, right?
Well,
like, no.
Go ahead.
Hold on. Let me just finish real quick. I don't mean it's not paced well as in like there's the dramatic buildup isn't dramatic enough because it's got all this like freaking smash your fist into things combat leading up to it. And then the moment happens and then it doesn't hesitate too long before it's right back to you burying your fist in people's faces.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have time to settle.
Yeah.
And again, like let's talk about the flaws of a Cliff Bleszinski game, right? The other thing is he's a director of encounters, of combat, of feel, but he's not a pacing guy. Like, right. I don't think that's one of his strong suits. And I think that's just like, you know, you're going to have people with their strengths and weaknesses, and that's fine. But you can't have a big moment like that without giving you time to like come home, hang up your jacket, and sit in a chair for a minute and think about it.
Right.
Right. You don't have that.
There's a moment, and we talked about this a lot when we had Leanna Kersner on, cause she highlighted it as like a really good show of like that, you know, these big macho men need to have that time to heal and feel and stuff. And I agree but I think it almost gets there and not quite. So there, and I don't want to spoil it, but there is a death that happens in Gears of War 3. And I will say that the way that it happens is really well done because it's like they actually bring in Mad World from like the original Gears of War commercial in a really nice way where it's like, oh, they finally made good on that, you know, and it works. But there's never time for the characters to react to it. Like there's moments where they're like, "Hey, are you okay?" It's like, "Well, no, I'm not, but we're going to go ahead and do this for this character," right? But at the same time, it's like, give me that moment where the character sits down and like has some tears, it's okay. Marcus, it's okay. You can cry for a little bit. And I wanted to see that. And there's another part, and it's not even necessarily like a death. It's more of just like hey, tell this person you love them. You haven't seen them in forever. Just do it. I need this.
I need around them or something.
Yes, please hug. I need this for my own daddy issues. Please do this.
Right.
And it doesn't happen. And it's like, yeah. I think those games are really good, but playing the third one and then also I played the beginning of the fourth one, and I was like, yeah, I wish that these guys weren't so bullet spongy and.
Right. And I almost wonder if someone's going to hear this and think, well, you know what? Real life doesn't always give you those opportunities. Real life doesn't always give you, if you're in a combat zone, you're not going to have that pace.
Yeah.
But as a director, as somebody who is designing an experience for the viewer a ride for the viewer to go on, right? You're kind of responsible to actually make those allowances, even if they don't necessarily make sense.
Yeah.
Like someone could come apart later and maybe critique it from a different perspective and say, well, you know what? The game was quiet for like 10 minutes after this happened. And that doesn't make sense because they just did all this dramatic stuff and now they're escaping this building and it should have been, more flash and bang realistically but you know what? At some point you have to say, hey, that's director's prerogative. They have to do that kind of stuff.
Well, and okay, so yeah, like that reminds me, and we won't go into a big deal on this, but
sure.
like one of my biggest problems with Star Wars: The Last Jedi, part of it is the fact that it takes place literally minutes after Force Awakens, so like there's no time for anything to have happened, but you killed Han Solo, guys, and nobody reacts to it. There's one quick moment of Leia like being by herself, like obviously sad about it, and that's it. That's it. And it's like, no, I need people to cry about this. I need people to be sad about this. I need Luke to say more than just where's Han. Ugh!
Yeah. And I mean, I could go into some I have seen people deal with some stuff that way, right? Like the way I think they're trying to portray Leia as being this strong person, now it's General Leia, right?
Yeah.
Like, so let's have her be a general. Let's have her be a little more stoic and a little more, hoorah, I guess. Not to be mean about that whole thing, but you know what I'm trying to say. But again, we're on this ride too.
Yes.
Right? Find a character. If it isn't Leia, find someone who can give us some closure on this situation.
Yeah.
Right? Have it be Chewie, for the love of God.
At least a quick monologue, like, have Luke tell Rey something about like how much Han meant to him. Give me 2 minutes.
Or say that, hey, I felt this. Acknowledge it. You're freaking with the Force. That's your life now. You're on the Force planet with the Force tree. We could do a thing. We maybe should do a thing. Part
of the problem that they can't take that time is that literally it's this breakneck, really slow chase. But as far as time goes, we're literally like 3 days out from Force Awakens, which means that these characters have spent like a total of like a week together.
Right.
When you take it all together. So with Carrie Fisher having died after Last Jedi, they have to kill her off screen, right? Like the next movie has to open with like the crawl being General Organa is dead, right? Because we don't want them to CG her. We don't want them to do some sort of weird stand-in, right? Like That's the tasteful way to do it. So
Right.
episode 9 better start with a funeral for Leia and Han, because they're like the heroes of the rebellion and they died within days of each other. Give me this, please.
Also, oh man, we can't do this. We don't have time. We would have to do a whole show about this movie. I will say this though. I can pick apart this movie and I can like go, man, you guys screwed up in some serious ways that I don't appreciate, and still say, I really liked this movie.
I really like the movie too. Yeah.
I really like this movie.
But
I can also critique it.
I can real quick, all I'll say is that I think it's got the worst plot of the entire series, but it's got some of the best character arcs of the entire series. I think the stuff that Rey and Kylo Ren and Luke and Leia and Poe go through are all great individual arcs.
That fight in the throne room is awesome. It's so good. I loved it. Sorry. Maybe you didn't.
I don't think Kylo Ren's very good with a lightsaber.
I think that's part of the point.
Maybe. I hope so.
He was always an apprentice, right?
Yeah, but I was hoping he'd be a better apprentice than that.
No,
you know.
Oh, dude, Snope has been stringing him along. I'm telling you. Like, that was one of the things. It's like, oh my gosh, he sucks. But Snope has been, like, enabling him for his own benefit. Like, that's or Snoke, or however you pronounce it. Yeah. Snopes is a website. Snoke is the...
is the guy.
Is the character.
My dream for episode 9 would be that it takes place 5 years after 8, and Rey has, like, 2 or 3 Jedi apprentices, and Kylo has a Sith apprentice. And so, so I don't need, like, lightsabers, like, all day long, like in the prequels, but if you got the lightsabers, I want to see you use the lightsabers, right, guys?
Yep. Yep. Oh man, I want to talk about this movie. I want to do a whole show about this movie. I will say this. My mother, who has watched all the Star Wars movies, is maybe a bigger Star Trek fan than my father is, which is kind of crazy, but like, that's like, I don't know, like as far as people go and as far as you would look at their characters, you would think it would be the other way around, but came out of that after seeing all the movies in between and said, now that was a Star Wars movie.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, she has seen all of the movies in theater, every single one from the very first one. Right?
Interesting.
So she came out and said that was a Star Wars movie. And I think part of that was she saw the prequels, right?
Right.
She saw the in-between movies, and this was the first one that brought her back to the original series, which I can totally understand. And also she hasn't seen, I'm sorry, I said all of them, but she hasn't seen Rogue One.
Okay.
Right? And I told her she doesn't have to, but it is good.
Yeah. I watched it, so when I first watched it, like I watched it opening day, obviously, and I really enjoyed it, but it took me a long time to get back to the theater to watch it again. And usually with a Star Wars movie, I'm like, I want to go back in immediately, right? Yeah. And I went to go see it a second time and I was like, okay, I really like this still, but there is some dumb stuff in here.
There really is.
And part of it is that I think the director, sort of like the director of Thor Ragnarok, doesn't really understand what he's got. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't hold, like he's like, I don't really care about this stuff, right? I'm just going to go in and have fun. And I don't really care about what's come before. I just want to like play with these toys, right? The way that he directs General Hux, like General Hux is like a cartoon character in the second movie. Yeah. Where I think in the first one, he was definitely like fascist poster boy, but in a really aggressive way that was like, ooh, like I don't like that guy. And here it's like every time he's on screen, it's like, you know, you can almost hear like ding to ding to ding to ding playing in the background. You know, like he's like a running punchline through the entire movie. He just
got more and more pathetic as the movie went on.
Yeah,
he really did. Like at the end of the movie, I pitied him, which is not the situation I want to be in with a Nazi stand-in, which is what they are at this point. I don't know. Yeah. You know, whatever they are, first order trooper, person, general. It's anyway.
Movie's got issues, but again, I really enjoyed the character moments in it, and I also wish that they could have found something better for Finn to do.
Yeah, there was that too.
Yeah.
I also thought that like, and I don't know, like you said this, that you felt the director just was playing with them, and I almost felt like he said, okay, what's the predictable thing? Let's do the opposite, and he did that every time, instead of sometimes going, well, let's throw him a bone here and there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he put too much effort on trying to subvert expectations.
So I don't know.
Star Wars show now. Aren't we?
We'll move on, but I don't know how to use Photoshop, right? I don't know how to make my own memes, but I want to make a meme where you have the scene at the beginning of Last Jedi where Rey is handing the lightsaber to Luke, but instead of the lightsaber, it's the script to Force Awakens, and then Luke holds the script to Force Awakens and then just throws it away, because that's what I feel like. That's what the director did, right? It's like he watched Force Awakens and he was like, I'm not using any of this. Whew, just chucks it.
Yep.
Because yeah. I've got issues with that movie, but I also enjoyed it.
Right? That is definitely a path you can take as a director, is what is the predictable thing? Let's make sure we don't do that. Right?
Yeah.
Fine. Man, I could... Oh, there's so much to unpack here. Not the least of which being the one Leia scene where everybody in the theater was like, really? And they all were.
No, not in my theater. In my theater, they were clapping. And
really?
Yeah, and it works for me. Like, I have no problem with that scene.
Okay, because this is before anything, because I stayed as dark as that as possible. We all sat down for dinner after that movie, and that was the first thing somebody said was like, that was weird. And I was like, yeah, that didn't make much sense to me either. But hey, at the end of, what was it, episode 6, Empire Strikes Back, Luke
5.
did very much say, right, what?
Well, 5 is Empire Strikes Back.
Empire Strikes, yeah, whatever. I screwed it up. 3, 4, and 5, derp. He said, my sister has it, so she does have that ability. And my sort of justification is, well, okay, you know how trauma makes your adrenaline happen? Maybe this is what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the confirmation that she knows, because they've always shown her be force sensitive, right? Like she, at the end of Empire, like she hears Luke, and then like there's that innate, she says like, I really always knew we had some sort of connection. She just didn't know what it was, right? And then when Han dies, she feels it, right? And she also in Last Jedi, she feels Kylo on that ship. So it's like they've shown that she's force sensitive, which as she should be. But and so it was nice to finally see her use the force.
But I almost think it's one of those. Yeah, my theory, and this is the theory I'm going with, is that she's not really force powerful, like force mighty, but she was in a traumatic situation, and like the mother who can suddenly flip the car off of the kid who is trapped underneath it, she could do the thing.
Yeah.
To get herself to safety.
And I would even say that she's probably force mighty just because of the bloodline, but not force trained.
Maybe.
So, but even so, like, and the director actually said this on Twitter, is that he didn't see it as like this big Herculean effort on her part, because she was basically just like using, like, basically just like kind of tugging herself and then letting like inertia take her the rest of the way,
Because
so
outer space.
Yeah. She just got herself moving in the right direction and then let inertia take the rest of the load. But
also, apparently, she had to be using the force to keep herself from being destroyed by the fact that she's in outer space.
Yeah, and I mean, you can...
Or movie.
Movie. And that's what I was thinking, is like, they showed characters in Guardians of the Galaxy out in space for crazy amounts of time before they get, like, help, and I was like, she wasn't actually out there that long, so...
Sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know how science works as far as that goes, but I always assumed if you're beyond the airlock, you're dead.
Me too.
So I think that's actual science.
Or at least also, looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger at the end of Total Recall.
Yep. That, or at least, I don't know.
That might be the image of this episode.
That might be. It's a good one. It's really funny. It's good, bad practical effects.
Yes.
All right, we're done with this. We got to move on.
Yes, we got to move on.
We do.
We've covered a lot in not a lot of time, I might add.
I know.
This has been a fun episode.
It has. I'm enjoying it.
I feel like I've been dominating the conversation a little bit, though. Okay. So why don't you hit us up with something else? I've got like one other big thing game-wise to talk about.
All right, video games or board games? You choose.
Board game.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about Clank in Space. Actually, no, wait, hold on. I should do Clank in Space, right? That's how you have to do that.
Yes, every time.
I talked about Clank before.
Yeah, and I remembered this one, which is why I wanted you to talk about this, because correct me if I'm wrong, this is the one where the noise is a factor?
Right. So, Original Clank was thematically, you are going down into a dungeon underneath a castle where a dragon lives, trying to grab some loot and get out before the dragon wrecks your face, right? That is the gist of this. This is Clank in Space. So what you are now on, you have infiltrated, you and however many other people are playing the game, have infiltrated a very, very bad evil dude's fortress-style spaceship, like giant space cruiser. And you are working your way from the point where you infiltrated all the way to the other side of the ship, getting loot and getting out before he wrecks your face. He is now the dragon, basically.
Right.
So here, let me go over, like, I guess the differences is, first of all, obviously thematics, and this thing leans into it so hard. Like, it is the Clank in space, the way I just said it. Like, embrace the cheese of the space opera. Make every reference you possibly can. There are references to Star Wars, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, freaking Farscape, right? Like 5 people maybe have heard of that aside from me. I was actually the only person at the table that picked up the Farscape reference on one card in that game. And they don't stop. Like if there is a space thing that is popular in nerd culture, it is in this game. And
so it's you're saying it's the Mass Effect of board games?
It is. Actually, there's no Mass Effect references. It's all film.
Well, because Mass Effect is already like referencing like all
right.
sci-fi.
Right. Yeah, it is more or less. But just on point, like there's a dude that isn't wearing a red shirt and you know what's going to happen to him. Like that sort of thing. On the cards, and not on the board, but on the cards. And there's a lot of cards in this game because it's just like Clank. Go back and listen to the Clank episode. I don't want to go over all the mechanics because that'd take forever. But it's the same thing. You're trying not to arouse suspicion. You are trying to move through the ship. You have to hack a certain amount of terminals on the ship before you can get past a certain point. And then you can steal a thing, and then get out. And everything has point values. The difference is one, you have to hack stuff. Obviously not in a medieval run into a dungeon and get out. And also in the medieval one, when you got your thing and got out, you just had to make it to the top of the board. And you were on the surface and you were safe. In this one, there are escape pods. And there are 4 of them. And if you take one, there's 3 left. And boy, if you are both heading to the same one, you are so screwed. And you have to go ahead for something else. Mechanically, there's a few things. There's cards that can trigger other cards, which was not a thing in original Clank. So say you played 2 cards that made reference to each other, they would basically boost each other's effects. It's not something I want to go too deep into just for the, I don't want to go too deep into mechanics on this. What I'm hoping to do is if somebody's interested in this, they'll go and look up other stuff on it, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't really do reviews live on the show, right? That doesn't make any sense. But it's still cool. It's still got the deck building elements. It's still got the intense level of you still pull these cubes out of a bag, and if your color comes out, you're taking damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just based on your level of suspicion. So the more noise and clank, it's still called Clank, even though you're not wearing armor, just because that's the franchise at this point.
I could definitely see you clanking on the metal floors of a spaceship.
Oh yeah. I guess that works, right? Like grating and things like that.
Yeah.
Just noise you're making in general, or suspicion you're raising. The more of your cubes are in there, therefore the more of yours that might come out. You can heal yourself. You can do all various numbers of things, but at the end of the day, if you stay on that freaking spaceship, you're gonna die. Get out. Get your thing and get out. The dude has a throne, and you can actually steal his throne, which is just awesome. Get to the throne, you can actually take the guy's throne and run out with it.
This feels to me like you could actually convert this into a video game in a real good way. Like, not necessarily like making a port of the board game, but taking the rules of the board game and putting into like a run-based game would be really cool.
I think you could. And having like a meter that grows. Yeah. Like that isn't necessarily like direct correlation to that, but it's just the harder the game gets, the more noise you make, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's any number of ways to interpret this. Oh, also, unlike regular Clank, the board to this one is modular. There's like 5 pieces that fit together and they're double-sided. So you can basically, every single time you get on the spaceship, it's different.
Cool.
Right? That's real cool. I like this a lot better than regular Clank. I didn't think I wanted to buy regular Clank by the time I was done with it. I was like, yeah, that was a neat experience. If someone on Game Group buys it, I will definitely play it again. The only reason I'm not buying Clank, well, there's 2 reasons. 1, I'm broke. 2, the other guy, that's a major part of, the guy who I'm friends with that's part of this game group is a huge sci-fi guy and was obsessing over this game, and I'm going to let him buy it, right? Right. Because that's going to be his thing for sure. I'm more the fantasy side, he's more the sci-fi side, so. But yeah, Clank In Space, really, it's like Clank, but way better, and I loved it. I loved this one.
Yeah, that, a lot of times when you talk about board games on the show, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really sound like it's for me, but that, both Clanks definitely sound like they're right up my alley if I had, people to play with. They're
not complicated. They're a little, the first time you play them, kind of wrapping your head around the rules takes a minute, but it's not bad, right? Just because it's probably, if you haven't played board games in a while, deck building is probably a new mechanic for you. The whole idea of this, it's not like any other board game. There's no roll to move. You have to draw cards that give you movement. But once you get the hang of it, it's just, oh, okay, cool. And now the next time I play this game, I will have it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, shoot, check this out. If there's a board game store near you that has a demo copy of this, try it out. It's really, really good.
There are. It's just, and it's funny you bring that up because, I was just thinking about that as you were talking. I wish that, and I've said this before on the show, I wish my brain was wired differently, right? I wish that I didn't have crippling social anxiety that makes it almost physically painful for me to engage with strangers because, I was actually at my comic book store a couple of weeks ago and it was on, they have tables set up and they have different events, right? I think one night is D&D, one night is other board games, like a bunch of different things, right? And so I'm waiting in line to buy my comics and this guy comes up and it was a packed house. it was very busy and he was there was 3 other people in line ahead of me and he's like, hey, would any of you guys like to play Cards Against Humanity or this other game with us? We're about to start in about 5 minutes. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun and maybe I can make some new friends. And I'm like, yeah, no, sorry. Thanks though. And my lovely girlfriend Jenny was like, no, but you totally could have. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I just would have been also it's Cards Against Humanity, which I need to have I need to be at a very a certain comfort level to play that game with people. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't think I'd play Cards Against Humanity with strangers because it's am I going to make the joke that makes them real mad?
Right.
Because that's what this game is all about, right? It's all about, the game is actually about being offensive. So at some point I need to offend people.
But it's it's about being offensive, but then there's the line, right?
Right.
And you never know. I definitely have some friends who hate that game, right? Mm-hmm. And part of it, I think, is because they're a gay couple and there may have been some answers that were put together that were
sure.
Kind of maybe skirting that line of homophobia or just in poor taste, for gay people, right? I get that, but at the same time, it's but that's also the game,
right.
So yeah, but you don't know what the line is and the line is different for everybody. So
I would have been uncomfortable. Well, I'm also not the best social person either, but I have an established game group that I kind of roll with, but rolling up to random strangers and being like, hey, here's a game that totally relies on you offending each other. I don't know you at all.
Mm-hmm.
Also, part of the game is convincing other people to like the stuff that you put together, right?
Right.
And if you don't know how these other people work, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have played the game with a couple of strangers and people that I know, and that's been really good. Sure. Because then you get to do the thing where you feel people out, where it's okay, what type of a degenerate are you? Right. Mm-hmm. And I was at this New Year's party with my girlfriend and two friends of mine that I've known for a long time. And then the rest were strangers. And then one of them was we had a really good affinity. And she was later on, she was when you were the only person who laughed at pixelated bukkake, I knew that we were on the same wavelength. Nice. And I was yeah, okay. That's fair.
Yeah. That is a word.
That is a word.
That is a word.
It's a filthy word.
It is. I didn't know what it meant, and somebody used it, and I was like, "Oh, I should look that up." I don't look that word up. Don't do it if you're not ready.
The funny thing is that I was playing this last time, and I mentioned it. I think I mentioned it. That I went up to Colorado recently because my friends moved into their first house. They bought a house, and so I was helping them move. And I picked up this game called Know What I Meme, which is basically Cards Against Humanity, but with memes, right?
Okay.
Like it's pictures.
I could see that working.
Yeah, so you basically have an easel and these really large picture cards that are basically like, I mean, if you know memes, like, they're in here probably, right? They got all the classics. And so then you draw cards and try to put the funniest caption to the picture. And what I found is that I'm still hip and with the lingo, and my friends aren't.
Oh, no.
So like there would be cards where it's like my friend was like, I don't even know what that means. Like one of the cards said it was a picture of a gravestone, and on the gravestone it said, "It was lit, fam." And she's like, I don't even know what that means. And I was like, oh, I might not be able to play with this with you guys.
I barely do. I mean, I do, but I worry sometimes that I'm not getting this thing right, because it is weird. That's the part of social stuff that I struggle with, right? Like, am I using this stuff correctly, or am I doing something horrible? You know what I mean? Like, that's the stuff that makes me freeze and get real anxious.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely had some cards that were funny to me, but I was like, they don't know what turnt is, so I can't use this card.
Yeah.
But it also made me feel youthful. I was like, hey, my eyebrows are on fleek. Anyway.
Yeah.
You know what else? You know what else is on fleek? Is the Dragon Quest games.
Oh yeah.
So I'm continuing down my appreciation of Dragon Quest rabbit hole, Angelo.
Where you at now?
Because I months ago, I'd played through Dragon Quest 4, and that was like the one where I finally understood Dragon Quest, right? Like I really enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, when I went on this trip last time to Colorado, I took Dragon Quest V with me. Cause I knew I'd have some time where I was cause I'm a terrible nocturnal night owl. So when my friends go to bed, I'm still up. So I'm like, okay, I'll just whip out Dragon Quest and I'll play that till I get sleepy. I finished Dragon Quest V. And the funny thing is that as I was playing it, I was like, does Dragon Quest all take place in the same world? Because I literally went to like a place that was identical to a place in 4. And so I looked it up, and apparently the Super Famicom games are part of a trilogy that do take place in the same world over like a long period of time.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. So I better play Dragon Quest 6 also. So I'm like 17 hours into Dragon Quest 6.
Nice.
And I gotta say, so from what I can tell, Dragon Quest V is the game, right? Like that is the Final Fantasy VI of Dragon Quest for most people. Like that's the one where you start off as like an 8-year-old kid, and then you grow up, and then you have kids, and they grow up to be about like 10 or something like that. And so it becomes this like generational thing, which is really cool. Like I wish more RPGs would do that.
I have not played that one.
I think 5 is actually my least favorite of the ones that I've played so far, which is weird. Mainly because it's super grindy. To an obnoxious level that other games of that era don't do. And the reason being is that you can recruit monsters in this game, and for a large part of the game, like, you don't have a lot of human party members, so you're bolstering your ranks with monsters. But every time you recruit a new monster, they start off at like level 5 or below, no matter what your level is. So they're constantly behind. On top of that, every time that you shift a generation and get new characters, they're way behind. So like when you start the final phase of the game and you have your 2 kids, they're like level 5 and you're like level 30. And it's like, okay, it's going to take me forever to make you guys even remotely viable. And on top of that, like the stuff is really expensive. So I found myself like having to stop for long periods of time just to grind out money, which didn't happen to me hardly at all in Dragon Quest 4. And it hasn't been much of a problem in Dragon Quest 6. So it's weird. And I don't necessarily mind grinding, but it's games of that era, I think, had figured it out where that wasn't the game, right? Like if you were grinding in a Final Fantasy game of that era, it was because you intentionally wanted to get overpowered. Right. It's not because you needed to do it. And I don't know, it was, Yeah.
Mhm.
But the story was really good in Dragon Quest V. I'm enjoying 6 even more, even though apparently it's like the least favorite from what I can tell from like the scuttlebutt that I've seen on the internet, and watching YouTube videos and stuff like that. But, I'm really enjoying it. I'm going to finish it. And then I've got 7 and 8 for 3DS, like, ready to go. And I am super excited for 11 coming out this year. That game looks fantastic.
It's a real shame 10 was an MMO.
It's the 11 problem, right? Is that,
right?
I mean, at least we got Final Fantasy 11, but since we never got Dragon Quest 10 over here, it's like, if you're a Dragon Quest fan, there's just this big gap in the series for you that you'll never fill. And that sucks. It should have just been Dragon Quest Online, and then problem solved. Just make it a spin-off.
Yeah. Mistakes were made.
Yeah, but that series is super charming, you know, and I like... I used to fault it for being so stuck in its ways, but now I appreciate it, because where Final Fantasy is like the evolution RPG series, where it's like every game tries to do something very different, and at, 15 games in is almost unrecognizable from the start of the series. Dragon Quest is like this nice constant flow. And it's like, you know what you're going to get with Dragon Quest, but it's good. Like you're going to enjoy yourself. And it's like, even though that I'm rapidly playing 3 in succession and probably going to play 11 this year, it's like, no, bring it on, baby. Like, I know I'm going to get this scale shield, and then I'm going to get an iron shield, and then I'm going to get, like this magic shield, because like the equipment is always the same. It's almost like you can set your watch to it. It's like, I know, like, the next sword is the Cautery sword. It always is. Oh, there it is. It's 4,000 gold. Let me go ahead and save up for that and get that. And that's going to do me until I get the Dream Blade, because that's going to be the next big sword.
But then at the same time, you get like Chapters of the Chosen, where, it has the Dragon Quest formula, but you get to play as all these crazy characters.
Yeah.
You get to play as a freaking merchant. I think that's my favorite one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, and the cool thing about 6 is that it has the job system. So I just unlocked jobs where I'm like doing that thing, that's the reason why I like 9 so much, was because of the job system in there.
I think that's a standard from then on out. I could be wrong.
It seems to go back and forth.
I'm pretty sure 7 and 8 have jobs, but I think maybe 8 they're locked into the particular characters.
Yeah, 8 they're already jobs, but then but each character has like their job specific stuff that they learn. And apparently the way 11 works is, again, they're locked into their job progression, but you have like a very deep ability pool. So you can spec out the way each character grows, which that's really cool. Usually JRPGs don't do that.
Yeah, 9 was so cool. Like, just the fact that my entire family, we all had our own cartridges, and we all would like hop into each other's worlds and play it. That was really neat.
Yeah.
Dragon Quest is good.
It is. It's really good. And again, going back to the Dragon Ball FighterZ thing, it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Dragon Quest 11 on PS4 looks really nice, but when you see Akira Toriyama's style in like whatever voodoo Arc System Works is doing with that graphics engine, it's like, give me that. I want that.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see that, because it's the same, it's the same art style. You can clearly do this.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of what drew me to Dragon Quest 8 it was the first game in the series to like, I was like, oh, this really looks like Akira Toriyama's art. And also I can see my characters, which is a big deal for me. That's the one drawback for these older games, is that I'm just watching enemies. And at least they animate really nice on the DS versions. Like the animation is gorgeous.
I know what really drew you to 8.
What?
Jessica.
Nah. Yangus drew me to 8. Well, he didn't draw me to, no, seriously, what drew me to 8 was the demo for Final Fantasy 12.
I believe that, actually.
That's
more
real
than
talk.
Anything else.
That's all I've got as far as like Consumption Junction stuff. I mean,
I can do a few more things.
Yeah.
I will say this real quick. I will be very quick with this. We played Ticket to Ride, which is a mass market board game, right? Like you can get that at Target or Walmart or wherever. And I know probably people here, like if you're looking for an entry one, or if you are somebody who is into board games and you are staying away from it because it's mass market, don't. It is really good. The only thing I would advise against is playing with a full player count. I think like 4 or 3 seem to be the magic number for that. 5 is too many people. You'll never get anything done. But it's a great game. I don't even know if it's worth talking about because it's so common right now, but basically it's Rummy, but with a board. And when you make a set, you lay a bunch of trains out on the board and you're trying to connect places to certain other places on the map. And if you do that, you get a lot of bonus points. So it's a real basic game, real simple, real easy to learn, real light on rules, but it's solid. Like there's solid strategy behind it. And there's a lot of worrying about, hey, are my opponents going to take these spots that I need? You know, it's kind of neat.
I actually thought that it was the board game equivalent of like Sim Theme Park.
Oh yeah.
I was way off.
Did you ever? Oh, you haven't tried playing it then?
No.
No. Ticket to Ride it's weird. It's train themed, and you're just trying to connect like train paths and things. But let's switch to video games for a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
Let me talk about a lame one and then a good one. So I'll get the lame one out of the way. I played Warhammer Quest. Now, I say Warhammer and lame in the same conversation, and somebody's jaw fell open, I'm sure. Here's the thing. We're not talking about 40K, which is my thing I love. We're talking about Fantasy Warhammer. And to be fair, this game taught me an appreciation for Fantasy Warhammer. Their classes are cool, right? So it's a free-to-play game.
Okay, I was about to say, with a name like Warhammer Quest, I was like, this sounds like the most generic ass thing.
That's the problem. So before we get to the problems, let's get to the good stuff, right? Like there are all these. So when you get the free to play version, you get 3 continents that you can work your way through and 4 characters. From what I understand of the Warhammer Fantasy world, they do not give you the most interesting characters, right? They give you an Iron Breaker dwarf, a berserker, an elf of some kind, like generic elf of elfishness lady, like seriously, and a gray wizard, which is like they can heal and they can do damage. They're kind of, I guess they're a red mage. Someone's gonna crucify me for saying that because it's not a direct comparison. I bet you I've already ticked off Warhammer fans. Anyway, so it is on its face a strategy RPG where you have the grid and you have a certain amount of movement and you get into encounters and you murder things, right? Strategy RPG. Here's the thing. Once you figure out how to play this game, you're going to do the same thing for every encounter. So I downloaded this game to give it a shot while I was sick. And it is a great play while you're sick and can't think game. Because seriously, once you figure out how to manage these encounters, so here's, I'll leave the strategy out of it because I solved the game and you probably will too, especially if you play strategy RPGs. It's very tight, very confined spaces. So you have, you don't have a whole lot of control, and sometimes you'll get a random encounter while you're wandering around. So your party will be broken up. But if you have control over how you encounter an encounter, and that's a terrible thing to say as far as language goes, you will win. There's no way not to. If you get surprised, you might lose once you figure this stuff out. The game needs something else to it. And I enjoyed it, right? Like there's the whole, I watched the numbers go up aspect to any RPG. And while I was just sitting in a chair doing nothing, waiting for myself to get better, that was fine.
Right.
Once I was better, I was done. I did not put any more money into it. I did not see any reason to put any more money into it because I could buy more characters and more continents, but at the same time, I will still be doing the same thing because why wouldn't I? That's how you win.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh cool, I got this. Oh, here's another thing they do, which is real weird. It's not like most games are like, okay, you can equip a certain number of rings and one necklace. And it does have that limitation, right? Like you can only equip, well, I don't know. I didn't I didn't run into issues with equipping rings because I have 10 fingers, and I guess they take that into account. Like, you can just put one on every finger.
Oh, really? Because usually games only let you equip 2 rings, and it always annoys me. It's like, I got 10 fingers,
wearing
guys.
5 rings by the end of this. I had characters wearing 5 of them.
Nice.
But, like, yeah, there is 1 necklace and 1 headgear and 1 armor and boots. You know, if you choose to equip boots, whatever. The thing is, where it gets dicey is it divides it up by rarity as well. So you have 4 slots available for common, 4 slots available for uncommon, and 4 slots available for rare, which makes no freaking sense at all. Like, why would I not be able to equip the same amount of common things, right?
Wait, you said 4 slots for each.
Right. So it's divided up by rarity, is what I'm saying. You can only equip 4 rare things. You can only equip 4 uncommon things. So if I had 8 common things, I could not put them in rare slots. They have to be rare items.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around it. The only way it makes sense is because you're getting there.
Do you pay more money to get more
There
slots?
it is! No, actually, you can't pay money to unlock slots.
Where's
The money,
where's the
I
money
guess,
come
is you can pay money to get other characters and more continents to explore so you can get more items, but I don't know. Like, it didn't, like, maybe it would make more sense if, hey, you can only get rare items if you can pay for it, because then these slots are wasted otherwise, right? But that's not, you get rare items in the game.
So the funny thing, and I've noticed this about Nerds Without Pants, is like the way that like the 3 of us think about video games. Mm-hmm. I tend to be the business guy, like looking and everything, and you know, this isn't fair to the consumer, but I'm like hearing that and I'm like, they're missing out on a really big revenue stream because they're seriously underestimating how people like to get real fiddly about their gear. Of course you should be able to pay to unlock extra slots to like equip that stuff. Like that's a no-brainer. That's like free to play 101.
Right. But here's the other thing. At the beginning of the game, you can only equip 4 items. Period. So it's like, and then, you know, when you start finding uncommon items, then you start, but it doesn't make sense. Like, you can just imagine how this is going to go, right?
Yeah.
It already unfolded in your head. As soon as I start getting uncommon items, I'm going to put my junk stuff. Hopefully they're common items. Like, okay, all my consumables are going common. Mm-hmm. Or maybe some rings because, well, why not? It's just not, the system doesn't make sense. I would seriously say, though, download it, give it a shot. If you just want to see numbers go up, it is that game. You will enjoy it. Maybe you'll even want to put some money into it, but like, it's not a strategy RPG as much as it tries to posture itself as one.
Yeah.
Because the strategy is solved almost immediately once you understand how the game works. It's not really much of a grind fest because there's not really much to grind for. It's kind of ill-conceived. But
that's my problem with like a lot of these like free to play mobile like RPGs and strategy games is that they're only like a couple mechanics away from being an actual game, right? Like Square Enix has released a lot of really good looking Final Fantasy mobile games, but then it's like when you play them, it's almost like, well, you just like sit back and watch them fight. And maybe you can do like, maybe you have a little bit of input on what happens, but it's like, just give me full control. That's all I'm asking for. Like,
yeah. And here's the funny thing. I did everything I could in that game because I had nothing else to do. And I wanted to see like what there was to this. So I put a good amount of time into it and I did everything I could for free. It didn't seem satisfying after a point. But I just needed to know, right? And one of the neat things it does, and I'll give it credit for this, is the game has you go on story-related quests, and it flags some of them as important, right? Like you walk into a town, and an event happens. Every town has an event. And sometimes the decisions you make during those events play into the stories of other quests that you do later, which I find interesting. I don't know how dramatic that is. I'm not replaying it to find out. But it's cool that they put that effort into it. But other than that, their quests are generic, phoned in. Like, literally, I started skipping them because they were the same thing, except they swapped words out for various things. You know, somebody was sleeping and had a vision of this thing, and here you are looking for the thing in the woods. So whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to talk about it a whole lot more. I would say check it out though, because I bet somebody listening to this would find it fun. And don't take this as me looking down on you if you do, because I had fun too. It just didn't have long lasting fun.
Yeah.
So.
It didn't hook you in the way
Right.
that, and you know, I think I find that that's how I find myself with a lot of mobile games, is that they'll hook me for a period of like maybe a week to a month, and then I'm moving on to the next thing.
Yep. While I'm here, the other video game I played was Ease, which is, by the way, Y''S.
Yes.
If you've ever seen that and wondered how to pronounce it, it's not Y's, it's Ease. So I found that out by saying it wrong.
Okay. I've known it for a long time, but only because I think like it was probably like an issue of Die Hard Game Fan back in the day that had it like in parentheses, like, oh, okay, it's Ease.
It's pronounced this way.
Yeah.
Ease 1 and 2 were on sale on Steam, and I got them for like peanuts. And somebody had always been saying, you'd like Ease, play Ease. In fact, I think, who was it that we had? Blake
said,
was on the show and said that. So that was one of the things I was like, all right, I'm trying Ease. So I got 1 and 2. And to be fair, these are super old. They are Japanese PC-88 games.
Right.
And oh man, dude, I scared myself because I'm getting so into, no, I'm serious. I got so into music. So I got the collection, and one of the things it lets you do is pick from one of 3 soundtracks. They have the Ease original, the PC-88, Ease Chronicles, and Complete, right? Complete is fully orchestrated. Chronicles did not specify what computer it was on. And I listened to it and I said, that sounds like the Sharp X86000 sound chip. And I was right.
Nerd.
I know. Oh my gosh, I'm starting to scare myself. So I actually was correct. Those were the ports on the Sharp 86000, which is a Japanese exclusive computer that I really like the sounds that it makes. To be fair, that's probably why I know it, because a lot of the times if I have a choice between versions, that's the one I usually gravitate towards for my listening pleasure.
If John Brandon of the Square Roots podcast happens to listen to this episode, he's just sitting at home rubbing his hands together going, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a music guy too.
Yeah.
So yeah. And man, and that, oddly enough, when I was listening to this, I would swap between them to hear what they sounded like. But like I would flip back and forth between the X86000 version of the music and the fully orchestrated one. And oh my word, people have been telling me the music to this is good. It is so good. Like, freaking Falcom knows how to make music. And I've always known this, right? Because people have been talking about it since the day I started looking into video game music.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't really, like, specifically hunted down stuff unless it was handed to me. Somebody said, oh, check this song out. You'll like it, right? Or I've heard it somewhere else in passing. And I was playing this game, and as soon as I went onto the overworld, I was like, this is awesome, right? Like, just give me a guitar. I want to, like, swing my head around. Good freaking music. And the versions are so different, so it's just fun. And then, you get to the final dungeon, it's like, you're in a final dungeon, bitch. Here's the music. So, stop playing around.
Yeah.
So, good, fun game, but old, and it shows its age in a lot of ways. Like, just how we have streamlined things, this has not. But it's short, too. So, I had to go to a guide a couple of times because I'm like, nothing here. Oh, I have to track like a dozen levels down this tower that I was in to talk to somebody I passed way back when to get the thing I need after I did this other thing to unlock this door. That's dumb. Oh, right. This is an old thing. They padded it out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what they used to do all the time.
How did we figure this stuff out, though, dude? Because we used to figure this stuff out on our own.
No, our friends and us all figured this out. Group effort / Nintendo power.
I get, yeah. Well, I mean, there were definitely games where even without Nintendo Power, like I figured them out. And I'm playing through these Dragon Quest games, and for each of them, I've had to go to a FAQ a few times just because it's like, wait, I've talked to pretty much everybody, I'm pretty sure. And then it's like, oh, wait, but I didn't talk to this one person that I've talked to 3 times before because now they have new dialogue. And it's like, Guess I should have known that.
The difference is I could have spent an entire day trying to figure this out as a kid, and as an adult, I just cannot.
Maybe that's the difference.
I think that has a lot to do with it, too.
We just
if I
brute
spent
force it.
2 days bashing my head against a puzzle as a kid and eventually figuring it out, first of all, that'd be awesome. Like, it would give me the biggest rush, but also I could do that. Whereas I just keep looking at the shelf I have full of video games and also other things I could be doing with my time, and I'm just like, I can't do this, so I don't.
Yeah.
Also, it has some stuff that's kind of crap, right? Oh, one other thing. Like, when really heavy guitar music plays and you're defeating enemies by literally running into them and them exploding, this is okay by me. 100%. Like, they just explode and like leave a blood stain on the ground and you just run into them. Like, there's no button to swing your sword. He does it automatically. It is the weirdest combat system, but it makes sense just from this is an old video game. In the first ease, you have to charge into enemies, and if you hit them dead center, they hit you. But if you hit them off to the right or to the left a little bit, you hit them. That's how it works. So first of all, it took me a minute to get my head around, actually lining this up perfectly is bad. Don't do that, because that goes contrast to everything I've learned in video games.
Yeah.
But once I got the hang, it's a good combat system. It's a little weird, but also designing boss encounters around that, you can tell they struggled a little bit with some of the boss encounters, but it works. Except for the last one. I'll get to that. This is East 1 I'm talking about, to be fair. I only just started East 2. So, but yeah, you literally, he runs fast and he runs into things and pieces of those things go all over the place and a little blood stain is there. That's how that resolves itself when you kill them. Fun.
Which for the time period, like that didn't happen very often with bloodstains and stuff like that. So that's interesting to me.
But it was a PC game, and PC games in the Japanese market were always edgy.
Didn't Ys have some fan service stuff in it?
No, not really.
No.
Not in this version anyway that I played, unless it was like an Easter egg I didn't unlock.
No, I think I'm thinking of a different Japanese PC RPG that I remember them like in EGM like doing like one of those like, games were a lot edgier in Japan, and they had like a screenshot of like a girl that was like having her clothes ripped that was very important to pubescent Julian. But.
So that's a thing too. Like in Japan, like they didn't put that stuff on consoles, but games were like 80% of the games on PC had fan service to them.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I can't tell you how many times I have found like a freaking awesome piece of music from a Japanese video game to be like, let me look into that. Oh.
It's one of these.
It's one of these. So, like almost at least half the time I find a good piece of video game music. That is the case. So that Ys is relatively tame as far as that goes. It just has the blood and guts. Which, that did actually surprise me because I'm just used to like that level of graphical fidelity being tied to more innocent stuff.
Yeah.
Not this time. So.
It's like, I think it's Technocop for the Sega Genesis.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which was like a pre-rating system game, and it's like, that one got by people because nobody played it, but you just melt people into bits of meat in that game.
Yeah, you shot people, and it was like shooting the world's biggest can of Chef Boyardee, is what it looked like, with a shotgun. It was pretty cool. At least that's what I thought as a kid.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing that. I don't remember how I saw it though. That doesn't make any sense because I didn't play it. I didn't know anybody. Oh, it was no? I have no idea how I was aware of this game.
I definitely saw screenshots for like either a review in EGM or something, and then working in retail, like we had the box for it. I don't know if I ever actually played it, but I definitely remember like, here's the box. I remember this game. Like I remember seeing this somewhere.
Right. I knew nobody who owned it.
Ooh.
Somehow I was familiar with it though.
I'm going to do one of these impromptu eBay checks. You're
going to see if it's worth anything?
I bet it is. Oh, that's that real quick. I finally scanned in my entire video game collection into that CLZ Games app.
Yeah.
And, yeah, my collection is worth over $20,000 on the low end because I know a lot of those games, when I was looking at individual prices, they were way cheaper than they were going for on eBay.
Cool.
So it adds up, man.
I'll bet.
It's crazy. When you see games, Technocop is pretty cheap. It's like,
it is a bad game.
It probably, yeah, I don't, it probably is. I'm not going to pick it up because I'm trying to not do that, but I don't have a lot of Genesis games, and that's like, yeah, you can get like a box, like a complete copy for like, 15 to $20, so that's not bad.
Yeah. Ys 2, I've played a little bit of Ys 2 so far, a little bit better as far as, things not being quite as obscure, figuring them out. And the combat system now has magic, so you can like throw fireballs and stuff, which is cool. And it has a system where if you hit the enemy at a diagonal, you always win, which is makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
But then it also does a thing where it puts you in like confined spaces, so that it's harder to do. So it's a better system overall, which I like. But also the end boss of the first Ys, guys, what were you thinking? This was one. It's got to be top 5 worst bosses I've ever fought. It's probably top 3. It might even be top.
For cheap factor or
yeah. So here's the deal, right? You fight this guy on a little platform. So you're already playing in a game that's like cutting your screen in half because it's an old PC game and that's what they had to do to get him to run, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's already missing part of your screen. And then you go on this platform so it's even smaller. And then every time you hit him, he blows up the piece of ground you're standing on. And if you're not constantly moving, you fall down and die instantly.
That is not okay.
It gets worse. He's floating. So you can't hit his sprite. You have to hit right underneath his sprite to hit him. So he's this giant sprite, but really this part below him is the only part that's actually damageable. So there's a good chance that you can get some good hits on him, but then, oh no, half the ground that you have to stand on is now cut off from you, because this happens all the time. Like you get like a bunch of good hits in, but now there's a diagonal line going across the thing and you can't get there.
Mm-hmm.
And you could quick do the math. Oh, I can't hit him enough for the amount of squares that are remaining. Unwinnable situation, may as well reset. Right? He's also throwing fireballs at you constantly that don't home in on you, but they fly at your destination. They're as fast as you are. And then when they hit, they explode into like 6 other smaller fireballs. You're constantly taking damage. I spent, I don't know how long fighting this thing because I had to beat the game.
Did you though, Angelo?
I didn't, but I did.
I would have been just like, I've seen everything in the game except like the ending. I'm probably okay. Like I can move on.
This was normal difficulty. There's also hard and nightmare. What masochist? Okay. So top 5 worst bosses, probably top 3, maybe even 1. Like, I don't know. I have to remember some of these other bosses that have like kept me up at night. This guy was just, you had to get lucky to beat him. It's the only way. It's bad. So bad. I have been assured by people that nothing like that ever appears in the other Ys games, and it's one of those deals where they can't mess with that encounter because it's so memorable.
Right.
For all the wrong reasons, but they can't change it now because if they change it, the fans will be upset.
It's like Spoony Bard. If you take Spoony Bard out, like there will be riots in the streets.
Except Spoony Bard is just an innocent translation thing, whereas this is an actual major. It's the last boss of a video game. It's.
The only Ys game that I've played was the one on the Super Nintendo, which is the side-scrolling one. That's
the 3rd one, and I've been told so. That has been remade on the PC as Oath in Felghana. Play that; it's way better, from what I've been told. It's actually, most people say Oath in Felghana is their favorite one.
Cool. Well, I was going to say that, like, I didn't play it long enough to really get into it, but have you seen the footage of the Ys game that's coming out for Switch this year?
No. What's that called?
I don't remember, because it's a Japanese RPG, but it looks really good. And so I might actually end up picking that up at some point, this year. I'm getting, if listeners haven't been able to tell, I've been getting really back into Japanese role-playing games.
Yeah, this is a good one. I would say maybe for, also, just for the sake of that last boss, maybe play it on easy. Not even normal. Because it's that last boss is a pile of steaming, flaming, broiling garbage. It's the broiled cabbage of garbage. It's what that is.
It's also interesting to hear that there's a difficulty setting on an RPG, especially an RPG from Japan
Well,
that
it's an action
old.
RPG.
Well, still, like usually you don't see that. I mean, look, I'm thinking I don't think Beyond Oasis had difficulty setting. Like,
I don't know.
Zelda didn't. Like, that's so interesting to me.
And it's an early one too. But I wonder if maybe those were added later on some of those ports, because that game has been re-released a lot.
Right.
The original Ys 1 and 2, aside from the first release, those have always been released. No, wait. The TG16 version, TurboGrafx 16 version, released them as two separate games, but your saves carried over.
Oh, that's cool.
That was the only
Man,
that
that's
only
really
the TurboGrafx
ahead of its
version
time.
did that. Even the PC version game I'm playing now did not do that. Did not carry over your save data. And I guess it's just like to kind of give you a leg up on the second game, but it's not really necessary. Like experience in something or other.
I still like it when they do that. I mean,
that's neat.
Suikoden 2, like, they said that it only carried over if you got all 108 characters in the first game, but it still carried some stuff over into my game. But it was funny because, like, the main character's his last name is McDole, in the first game, and it was the one time that I named my character Julian, because I never do that in RPGs. I always name my characters Edge, based on the ninja from Final Fantasy IV. So the funny thing is that, like, this is now the third legendary hero named Edge to save the same world in Dragon Quest. But anyway, so on Suikoden 2, like, it messed it up to be, instead of McDole, it was Jickdole, because they just replaced the M with the J, and it's like, well, so you kind of read my data, but, not quite. So.
That's kind of cute.
Yeah.
The Arc the Lad did that too. When you beat the first game, it would check your save card, if you had the same save card in there. And the items your characters had, you could get out of from a dealer for free later in that game.
Yeah, because it was that, because they designed it almost like, because like Arc the Lad 1 was almost like, well, we just gave you like half the game.
Yep, literally half the game. That was what happened. Arc the Lad 2 is very different, but in a good way. I like Arc the Lad 2 a lot.
I really should open that. Mine is still sealed. I have that collector's edition of Arc the Lad collection.
I do too. It's on my
we should wrap up though.
Oh yeah.
We've been going for a good long time. But before we go, it is time finally to kick off the new segment that's replacing Chrono Crossing, Angelo, the Pack Watch. Now if listeners forgot what we're doing, because it's been a while since I talked about this, Angelo, Patrick, and I jotted down a total of 150 video games. And what we did is the games that all three of us had played, and these are games we've played a decent amount of, like a nice chunk to be able to really talk about. So of those 150 games, it ended up being about 60 games that all three of us have played. So what we did is, those 60 games, I think it's actually like 58. I printed those up, cut them up, folded them, and they are in the Jar of Destiny. Right now, it's just a mason jar. I'm going to get something fancy related that I'm going to put on Twitter. But what we're going to do every episode is I'm going to randomly pick one of the games from the Jar of Destiny, and then that's what we're going to talk about in depth in the next episode. So what this segment is going to be, I'm going to do a little bit of like cursory research, kind of jot down some fun information, like when the game came out, publisher, developer, metascore, and then maybe some little factoids and stuff. What I want from the listeners and from us also is not only like impressions of the game, but if you have any fun anecdotes around these, because a lot of these are like older games and stuff like that, games from our childhoods, games from our teen years, stuff like that. So if you have fun stories about them, maybe like the first time you saw the game, or like maybe you saved up to buy the game and it took you a long time, things like that. That's kind of the type of stuff that I want to hear, like fun little anecdotes and stories revolving around your memories of these games. You can shoot those in the comments at pixelbit.com, or you can hit us up on Twitter at NWPcast. Our DMs are open, so if you have like a little bit of a longer thing that's not going to fit in a tweet, you can definitely DM us, and then I'll read those out on the air. So with all that being said, I'm going to swirl around the Jar of Destiny and hopefully put in some fun, like, lead-up music here and pick our first game for the very first Pack Watch. It's very exciting. I'm digging in here, too. I'm not just, like, grabbing the first one off of the thing. So, next episode, we will be talking about Metroid for the original Nintendo. The very first Metroid.
Boy, that game.
No, save it.
Oof.
Save it.
Yep. I will.
So yeah, we'll be talking about Metroid in the first edition of the Pack Watch. I feel that that's very good. That's a good first pull.
It is.
So that makes me happy. So yeah, definitely get those comments into us either at Pixelbit or on Twitter by 8:30 Central on February 22nd, and hopefully we'll get you on the show. So yeah, excited. New segment. But that'll do it. You can always find us individually on Twitter. Angelo.
I'm at a roguish ham.
You can find me at Julian_Titus. You can find Patrick at some boss. And in case I forget, in the next episode, look for me on an upcoming special edition of the Square Roots podcast. I'm going to be on with John Brandon for their Mass Effect wrap-up episode, which should be a lot of fun because I have found out that I don't really hold stuff like Star Wars or Star Trek or anything too precious, but apparently Mass Effect is my sacred cow. Because as I was listening to them play through Mass Effect, I was just gritting my teeth and just yelling into a pillow constantly. So I've got some things to say on the Square Roots podcast, and I'm looking forward to it. So check that out and give those guys a shout out. And if you listen to it, let them know that Nerds Without Pants sent you. But that's going to do it for this episode. For myself, Angelo, and a shout out to Patrick who couldn't be here. Thanks for listening, and keep it pantsless, Internet. Goodbye.
I've been dreaming of going to Mars, where mutants drive plastic cars. So I go there, you know the rest. The best part was the girl with 3 breasts. Total recalling. Total recalling. So I'm on Mars and I meet Queto and I pull this big metallic thing out of my nose. It makes me scream and shout and move my big robotic head all about. Total recalling. See you at the party, Victor. Total recalling. One more time, fellas. Total recalling. I'm going to start balling. I'm so sad I can't screw Sharon Stone, and Macaulay Culkin is left home all alone. Ah! Total Colin! Johnny, give me the bass. You got to slap it a little harder. Give me the bass. Alright. Okay. This. I don't think it's in tune because I don't know the fingering. It's not working. Johnny, grab my hand. Grab the bass.